All right. Welcome to the FP&Ai Podcast, where finance meets the future. My name is Roger Knocker. So recently I recorded a very powerful conversation with Andrew Brown. Andrew is a leadership coach, and I've known and trusted Andrew for over 20 years now. And he's just not another consultant. He's a friend, he's a colleague, he means a lot to me. And in fact, in my own business, when I'm running a strategy workshop, I invite Andrew. So we've worked on on church projects. He was a supplier and I was a client. Then we became colleagues. We actually sat next door to each other and worked on very similar projects in the same company. And then he was the client and I was a supplier. So we swapped roles. And so that's how our relationship has gone for many years. So Andrew's got a BCom. He's got an MBA. He's experienced. He's worked at a consulting firm, Accenture, in an international manufacturing business and many tech companies. And he brings a very sharp and unfiltered lens on leadership and strategy. So we recorded the session and I've titled it Finance as a True Business Partner, Going Beyond the Numbers. So in this first part, we discuss why finance can't just be about keeping the books balanced anymore. We talk about the role of leadership coaching, why change management is critical for strategy, and how finance professionals can stand out by presenting data visually and not just in our normal spreadsheets, which we love so dearly. So Andrew challenges traditional, views of finance because he's been that CEO of a business and he's had to work with finance professionals. And he's asking if we're truly helping to drive business growth or we're just reporting the past. So if you're in finance, this episode will give you a practical, kind of a no-nonsense advice on how to step up and become a true business partner to your CEO, to your colleagues, and to your organization. Enjoy. Today I've got with me Andrew Brown, who I've known for about 20 years. And Andrew, you're a leadership coach.
Exactly.
And what is that?
What is that? I work with individuals and teams in businesses, and I help them develop their leadership capabilities, get alignment within teams, very much around strategy, performance, communication, and ensuring that everyone's sort of focusing in the right direction. And then when I'm working with individuals, it's actually almost like I'm a sounding board. I'm a thinking partner,
okay,
where I can listen, I can challenge, and I can provide people with just that opportunity to think through the challenges they're having, the issues that they're having, and actually find direction and new thinking and look for new perspectives. And I work with a number of entrepreneurial organizations and quite a few corporates in terms of looking for that alignment and hopefully bringing the sort of direction that they're seeking. But ultimately, they know their businesses, they know what they're on about.
Yeah.
My job is there to facilitate and challenge. Yeah.
And I know, because I use you, I think it was this year I woke up, I hadn't planned our strategy session. And I do strategy sessions for other companies, but when I'm doing it for my own business, I can't see the forest for the trees, if that makes sense. So why is that?
I think that's quite simply because you're at the coalface and every day you're worrying about actually the operations.
Yeah.
And I think that's the kind of perspective that I can bring, is that I can pull people out for a while to say, let's just pause, stop, think a little bit. Get out of the sort of the noise and let's just understand from a bit of a further or a broader context what's happening in your organization. And then what is important to you and looking at focus and prioritization. And I believe it adds a huge amount of value. I mean, that's the sort of feedback that I get from people.
Absolutely.
But I think in your case, it's quite simple. You understand when you are talking to other organizations, you're providing and able to facilitate that because you see it with different eyes. And that's what I help people do.
What is the magic in a facilitator? Because sometimes you get facilitators who understand the people dynamic a lot and they're very sensitive to the mood and the culture. And that, with you, I know that you've got a commerce background, you've worked at Accenture, you've been a manager, you've got an MBA. So you listen to us talking in our workshop, but then you come in and you say, but that doesn't make sense. And do all leadership coaches do that? Do they rely on different aspects? How do you see that?
Yeah, it's interesting.
And if you can bring both, you're aware of the mood and the change management aspect, but you also understand finance, you also understand IT, you also understand process, you understand projects, programs, delivery. Isn't that a huge advantage in the work that you do?
I think so. I see the work that I'm doing as the sort of intersection of there needs to be a strategy, there needs to be a plan, there needs to be an ambition of where we're taking the organization, and it needs to be understood in a very clean and simple way so it can be communicated. Then there's this whole thing of, well, how are we going to do that? So what's the organizational capability, whether it's skills, structure, and technology that is required in order to deliver that? But then you can't do that without taking the people along. So there's this change management aspect. But from my experience, having worked with so many teams and in organizations, I've just seen how important leadership is. Because if the leaders are able to clearly articulate, this is where we're going, okay, this is how we're going to do it, and this is how you lot, the team, are going to contribute to this and actually take them along on the journey and be able to paint a compelling vision of where we're going. So that's why the strategy is important. And when I do a facilitation, I like to bring these components together. So yes, there is a very practical component. Business is practical, okay? It's about getting stuff done.
Yeah.
But you want to get stuff done that is aligned to an end destination. But if people aren't getting it and understanding it, and they don't have a clear sort of picture, right, how do they fit into this? What's their role in this whole process? Because that, to me, is where the magic happens. The magic happens with the people and then being excited and waking up on a Monday morning. I mean, that's, what's the definition of culture? It's how you feel on Sunday night about Monday morning. And if you've got this kind of pit in your stomach that's going, oh no, I don't want to go to work tomorrow. Yeah. Or there's a sort of opposite, which is that excitement of, hey, we're starting a week. Isn't this cool? Yeah. What are we going to achieve together collectively in this next week in order to meet that end objective? So, I mean, I know that sounds like it's sort of, how can I say, sort of nirvana or the ideal. Yeah. But I mean, that to me is what you want your staff and your team to be feeling. And so how do we get them there? And yeah, I try and work with teams in order to try and facilitate that sort of excitement. So it's not just about the kind of the IQ, hey, we've got KPIs and all. We need to know what we're going from, which is the hard business measures. But there's a whole EQ component to this as well. What is the kind of the hiss, if I'm going to use this, or the vibe, okay, that's going to drive us as an organization in order to achieve this? And I like to work with both components. And very much a big focus on if we can bring EQ into this process and get people motivated, excited, and they can understand the why of achieving this, then we are on a much better track.
Let's stay with the strategy conversation a little bit because it's quite relevant to what we're going to be discussing later. But how do you know once the people in the workshop are bought in? Are there signals that you start seeing? What happens in that workshop?
Energy.
Energy. What is energy?
Energy, and you can see the excitement when you see. So let me tell you, I want to give you an example. Working with a team from a large bank, and we were working on both the IQ and EQ goals for this particular team. So, and their job was to move legacy systems into the cloud, and they had these big project plans and a lot of pressure, and the KPIs were essentially around cost saving, number of systems move across, due dates, the on time in full type measures. Okay. And I challenged them with, what is going to get you sort of excited from an EQ perspective? Come, let's start with coming up with some ideas. And one of the members of the team said, you know what? If the CEO was to mention us in a public forum and to acknowledge the really good work that we're doing, we will feel that we've absolutely made it. Now, the CEO of a large bank compared to them is like 4 levels up higher than they are, from a reporting structure perspective. But it was interesting. You could feel the energy in the room suddenly change because then it wasn't so much about meeting the KPIs, because that suddenly became, that's a given. We have to do that. But how do we now market internally, and how do we make sure that, yes, we're going to do that, but we're going to tell certain people, and we need to start engaging with this team and that team, and then how are we going to get our boss on board with this so that he or she is then going to start telling their bosses so that the CEO is going to hear about this. And it was just the energy in the room palpably changed to something that was really excited. And they walked out of there going, there was a stride, there was, we're it, we can do this.
Yeah.
And at a different energy.
And were these people engineers and IT people and finance people, etc.? And
yes,
what would
professionals,
even
professional
them,
IT teams. So
and even
analysts,
they want
developers.
that recognition, that they saw 100%. The value in this public recognition.
Yes, it's a motivator.
It's a motivator.
So recognition is one of the things that people require from a motivation perspective. If you do a good job, you should be recognized for it. And it doesn't cost a lot. It's not like you have to recognize by giving money. You just
that was my next question. Isn't it all about money?
I'm not convinced by that.
Why not?
Because I feel that a lot of recognition, we can talk about reward and recognition. So on the recognition side, recognition of a job well done and a team doing something extremely well often is probably 70 to 80% of it. My view on the reward thing, often it's, once it's been paid and it's in the person's bank account, then that's done. So that was okay. So what's next? And how are you going to reward me the next time round? Yeah. So I'm not, I think it's important, but I think it's a hygiene factor. I don't think it's what gives job satisfaction. Okay. I think that's my big definition between the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about strategy workshops. We came here to talk about how a leadership coach would sees finance people. But let's just stay with this conversation because I think it's got some momentum.
Sure.
And what I want to talk about is, what is finance's role? How do you see finance's role in a strategy session? So typically you go on what we call in South Africa a bosberaad. It's a think tank, probably overseas. But we go on this thing called a bosberaad, and we normally have the CEO and the CFO and the HR director. We have representation from the whole executive team normally. So my question is, when you run these sessions, how do you engage with finance? What does finance typically come back with in these sessions? Is there a theme? Are they worried about cost? Are they the quieter people? Are they are they leading the discussion? Are they leading the process? How do you normally see finance people in these sessions?
Yeah, interesting one. So my background is that I have worked in IT companies, some corporate companies, private companies, and I've been doing that for almost 25 years before I switched to my current role of being a leadership coach. So I've experienced these bosberaad from the other side, so to speak. So
as the user,
yeah. And in those companies, some of which I was leading the company, I was the MD or the managing executive or whatever, and so I was setting those things up, asking the finance to contribute. So the contribution usually was, how did we do last year from a financial perspective? Did we make money? Did we lose money? Where did we lose money? What went well? What didn't go well? But it's all very sort of
financial.
And
you expect that from the finance person.
And it's a very, very important. Remember I was talking about KPIs, the IQ versus EQ.
Right.
So this is very, very much an IQ conversation, and it's usually a cut and paste from an Excel spreadsheet onto PowerPoint. If you get a graph. If they know what PowerPoint is, okay. Otherwise, it's just the Excel spreadsheet is put up there, and then it's just busy and it's busy. And then it's kind of, okay, so what are we looking at? do we understand? So often it's not translated into something that actually the rest of the team can look at and go, right, we get it, and we know it. So often, I think just from a communication point of view, so we should put that as a topic.
Yeah.
Financial communication.
Yeah.
I think it's a weakness.
Yeah.
Okay. from financial people.
Yeah,
In fact, I must challenge you. You come from that.
And I agree. I agree. Well, we can debate that. Let's get the feedback just now. But let's go back. We're in this Bosport, so the FD often gets up and gives us some numbers. And
it's usually one of the first things that happens. It's usually number 1 or 2. We do a welcome. Okay, the first thing is, let's look at the numbers.
Not the vision. The numbers is where we normally start. It's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing.
There's merit in it.
Well, there's an element of you have to close off the prior year before you start with the new year. Okay. Then it becomes, okay, what are we going to be doing for the new year? And that's actually when finance goes quiet.
Yeah.
Because now it's sales. The sales director actually starts to paint the picture of, it's last year plus 10% or whatever. These are the numbers. This is what we're projecting. So it's almost at that point that finance is done. They might come back again when we go and say, okay, let's look at our expense lines, because if suddenly some people are saying, oh, but we need 3 more staff here and you need this, that, and the next thing. And it's usually finance's job to say, no, you can't.
Yeah.
Okay.
They crunch the numbers.
So they've crunched the numbers and they say, well, if we're going to hit what our shareholders need in terms of return, our expenses need to stay within this percentage. They can only increase from last year by CPI plus whatever. And you need to hit the following. So my experience of the finance role is very much been, we report on the past. We'll tell you what you can't do. Okay.
For the future.
Yeah. And then there's not much input into enabling about how are you going to do this? Not like I don't know. I haven't experienced many financial people who actually help you run the business from a growth perspective. And I think that's it.
Yeah.
If you want to grow your business, and every business has to grow in some way, manner, or form, there's not a huge amount of input in terms of growth. That's usually left to business development, sales, the manufacturing, whatever, but not much to say what levers could you pull. If you did this, then you would actually make more money here, et cetera, or how could we financially model this in such a way that it would give you some insight into how you could go and grow product A or product B. If you went into this market, what would that mean? I've never, from my experience, had a lot of input from finance in that respect.
Okay, so I think for the rest of the podcast, let's go in, and I want you to give feedback to finance. I represent finance. Let's assume that I'm taking the finance community on, I'm representing them today. There's nobody else in the room. So I want you to give us, and you've started giving feedback, but let's get to some practical things about what they do and what they don't do, what they do well.
Let's start there.
And maybe we can, I was thinking maybe we can start just presenting the numbers. Let's just talk about, we want them to present the numbers. I mean, I don't know 100%. If there's anybody else who's going to do a better job. And what can they do? We spoke about the busy spreadsheet, the complex, people not sure what we're looking at. It's always a spreadsheet. What are some of the things that we've seen good finance people do that stood out from the crowd and really presented well?
Okay, so obviously the numbers from the prior period, whatever that might be, presenting those, explaining them well. Explaining, usually it's the variances, okay?
Yeah, or growth.
What went up, what went down. Where we're spending too much money.
Yeah.
And explaining what that came from. So it's kind of the factual pieces there.
But there's variances all over that sheet, and you want to understand those variances quickly as a non-financial executive.
Yeah.
What are the big ticket items, and how big was that issue?
Yeah, in my experience, I think good financial people, when we get to this whole thing about communication, will explain that extremely well. That hasn't always been my experience. The people in the room have to ask and they have to dig in. It hasn't been, because you just got this Excel spreadsheet. It wasn't okay. It's almost like, the notes to the financials, okay? It's almost like you want to be able to say, there's the overall picture, but there are 5 items that now need a bit of a deep dive.
Yeah.
Right, next slide. Or
So
next
it's
picture.
going from summary to detail.
Yeah,
That's what you
okay.
want.
This is why, and it's because in the third quarter we had this particular thing, which was a variance, or we had to mark something down, or we had a disaster, or a key customer left us, and therefore, hence the impact.
And something simple that could be done. You see the spreadsheet. You've got the 2 numbers, this year, last year. Some people put the variance in monetary terms, some put it in percentage, and many times they don't rag it. So it's not amber, green, or red. So just something simple like that. Just put
Traffic lighting.
A traffic light.
Oh.
Geez, we'll get it, and we want to see the big stuff and whether it's green or red. And speak to us about the positive and the negative, and show us how big the thing is. How big is that variance? Maybe on a waterfall chart. Say, hey, that's what we planned to make. This is what we did make. Look how big these waterfalls are, big and small, up and down. And then, always go from summary to detail. That's something that is quite simple for any finance person to learn. Right?
It's funny, you say that, because one of the things I often get involved in when I'm doing a coaching exercise is just helping people just represent what it is that they're trying to say graphically, so that the audience that they need to present it to will understand it and it's clear. Like that waterfall graph. I mean, it's such a simple thing to do, and it just speaks. A picture tells 1,000 words. That is just a beautiful way of representing something that's quite complicated, and people get it instantly. Instead of 20 bullet points on a sheet. If you
I remember in the church that we were both BBC. Johan Groenewald, if he's listening.
Yes, I remember Johan, yeah.
Johan's a typical accountant. He looks like an accountant. He speaks like an accountant. A stereotype. But I remember he used to give the financial report at BBC, and he did a waterfall chart. I think it was the first time I'd seen a waterfall chart.
Mm.
It was so simple to understand the finances compared to every other year we'd been there, where we got the auditors, left and right column, hardly a variance, no ragging. He put a waterfall chart. What he also used to do on a Sunday morning, he used to do the worm report, or like the cricketers.
Like the cricket.
He would say, that's what we did last year. This is what we're doing. Look, the worm's going underneath last year's number, and the money would just come in. The money, people would start giving and tithing, and it was such a simple thing. And he mastered that in a church situation. He knew that. And he just showed the worm. Maybe it wasn't every week. He probably showed it once a month or once a quarter, but it was effective. People responded.
Yes.
Why do you think they did?
Because it was simple to understand. They got the message.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, for those people who watch cricket, they get it straight away. I mean, it's such a simple graph.
So he had the worm graph and the waterfall. And he had a whole lot of other stuff. I mean, he could reconcile stuff back to the cent if need be. But when he communicated, he went that extra step, and nobody asked him to do it, but it worked.
Yeah. And, for businesses that are, where there's, let's say, sort of transaction-based businesses where there's sort of a daily run rate that they need to stay on top of, being able to, on a weekly basis, show your worm against your budget. And we just, instantly, are we above, are we below? And if we're below, what are you doing about it? It's suddenly, focusing the conversation and attention of the people in the room on what matters. Because if you're above the line, okay, well done for that. Where are we below? Where can we help you do that? It's kind of that whole IT concept of the daily stand-up. When you do those sorts of things and you can present your financial information that simply, it's suddenly you can get people focused and you can get action.
So
it's about alignment.
Yeah. Simple and visual.
Simple, yeah.
And visual, and you 80% of the way there. And you don't have to sound like the big bad ogre.
Yes.
And people understand and they get a line, and it's quick. It doesn't have to take long.
And then, that whole idea of, okay, so let's start doing a bit of, as I say, in transactional businesses, you can start doing. So what happened last month this time, and how do impacts weekends impact, and school holidays impact, and the weather, the famous one of sort of ice cream in summer, versus winter type thing. So what are the fluctuations? What should we be worried about? How far behind are we actually? Because there are public holidays coming up. So guys, if we don't hit this, really hard in the next 4 or 5 days, we're going to hit problems because next week might be Easter or something like that. So bringing those sorts of things into the conversation, which the financial people will understand, extremely well.
Okay, so we're gonna go into that, focusing on the future.
Mm-hmm.
In this Bosberaad, you said the CFO starts, they present the numbers, and then they go quiet for a few hours, and they listen. Maybe it's a good thing. We need more listeners, right? It would also be great if they were innovating a lot of the time. And we've seen, you and I have worked in businesses where we've worked with a CFO who's an innovator and says a lot, and challenges the workshop and comes up with ideas and champions those ideas.
Yeah, I've worked in a number of different organizations, and I've worked with a number of FDs, and they've all been pretty good in terms of
the historical number,
the historical stuff. Okay, and then presenting the board packs, and then and doing budgets and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, I'll give them
budgets. I might beg to differ, but I've got some gripes about budgeting.
Okay, well,
we can come back to that.
But on the whole, all of that, and then the operations of finance. You've got to invoice, you've got to collect the money.
Get your debtors, your creditors, and your recons.
And making sure that all works and happens, and paying everybody, et cetera, et cetera.
And nobody else wants to bother with it. If the FD's got that and his or her team's got that, that's brilliant. I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's the sort of the kind of real transactional side of bookkeeping and finance. And
thank goodness for these people that do it.
Exactly. I won't say that they are always the best managers.
Of people.
Okay, there's a topic.
There's a topic you can explore.
Yeah, all right. But certainly getting that done and sorted.
And making sure the debits equal the credits and
that sort of detail. So that attention to detail
is phenomenal.
Is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay. And they are.
And they're tireless.
And thank goodness for that. Now that I'm running my own business, I have to do this stuff now.
I stay away from that.
And it's horrible.
I've got to outsource it or delegate. Eliminate, delegate, automate, right?
Yeah, exactly. In all of my time, so almost 30 years of working with this group, I've only worked with one who I felt actually he or she, but it was a he, was actually fully in there engaged in worrying about how every aspect of the business was running and how his department could help and enable. And he was questioning, why people were doing this, that, and next. But he was fully engaged on what was going to happen tomorrow and next week and next month and 6 months' time and 18 months' time. And he worked extremely well with the MD or the CEO of it was one of the divisions. And sure, between the two of them, they made a really, really awesome team. But they were both on what's going to happen tomorrow. How are we going to sell? How do we sell more? Who should we be? How do we engage with customers? And how do we engage with suppliers? How can we go and negotiate prices down? The CFO was very much involved in all of that. So go and reduce here, but being part of the negotiations, part of the discussions about how can we find suppliers.
IT systems, he probably would have been in there helping with master data and 100%. Processes and giving leadership and direction.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, my experience has been that very few of them, once they've got an accounting system that works, that's an Excel.
Yeah.
And
you don't want to tamper with it.
And they stuck.
Works. And
But finance should integrate. If you think about the ERP types, it just actually integrates with everything.
Yeah.
That the sort of appetite to take that on is not really there, which I think is sad, to be honest, because I think they can have such an impact on how the efficiency and effectiveness of how an organization runs.
And they're wearing the profit hat.
Yeah.
Sometimes they wear the compliance hat and that, but their role in FP&A, which is what we're talking about here, our role is to make sure that we generate profits in a sustainable way, in a responsible way. There's other people who worry about compliance and whether the air conditioner is on and safe and the fire extinguishers are all working. There's those people as well. There's people who are sales orientated, and we need all these people, right? We need, often the HR community comes with that people aspect and that high EQ part.
Mm.
But our role as FP&A is profit. It is making sure that we don't, we grow sustainably, but we make a profit and we generate cash.
So given the conversation we've been having, okay, so I can only speak with the people that I've worked with before, but you're working with these people. Are they receptive to this, or are they more like the people that I've been describing?
People who spend money on planning systems are like that FD. If you're going to spend money on a planning system, you're looking into the future. You want your forecast to be accurate. Mm-hmm. You want it to be quick. You want to have options available, scenario analysis. These are the kinds of things that these kind of CFOs and finance professionals are interested in. The ones who are more backward looking they don't spend on themselves, right? They can't, they've got Excel and the ERP system. They can't bring themselves to go to the CapEx board and say, I need a new system. For many of them, they're stingy on themselves in the finance department.
Yeah.
And they run at a fraction of the cost of the overall business. And they're too scared to ask for money. You get that group, but the group that's looking forward are strategic and they insist on the system. They insist on a forecast. They insist on understanding profitability to the nth degree. They're also the people who get their month end done very quickly. They've realized that for every day that you save on month end, you make money because you can spend it on high value activities, looking into the future and profitability and cash. And so that's what I see. That's kind of the two schools.
So we've got different mindsets here.
I think so, yeah. And that future-looking one is more entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
They often they don't have to be extroverted, but they often voice their opinion. In that Bosparot, they don't stay quiet for 3 hours. You hear them virtually in every conversation. They're contributing at that level on the ideas, the marketing, they're giving input and they're engaging throughout that period.
And they're creative.
Yeah.
Because it's quite interesting if you look at the character. I mean, what is the typical character of somebody who goes into auditing, accounting, and becomes an FD?
A lot of it's a safe bet. I've spoken to hundreds of people.
Yeah.
They didn't know what they wanted to do, so they became an accountant because it was a safe option.
It's a profession.
It's a profession. Their parents would have said, it's a good profession. You earn good money. It's a safe option. You can go into anything after you've done that.
Yeah.
So it's a safe. Think of the safety factor. It's a safe option. I'm going to live a good life if I become an accountant.
Yeah, if you're looking at it from basically a profession and setting yourself up for life.
For life, yeah. With a family and goals and that sort of thing.
I think also if one's more kind of on the front foot, if there is a way to understand a business, understand the finances, because then you know exactly what's happening where and how it all works and how it all fits together and where the leverages are and what you've got to focus on. You
could argue that going the HR route is the way, because you understand from the people perspective. You can argue you going to IT, because once you understand all the systems and the processes and then the data.
I suppose so, yeah.
But the reality is this finance one is the one where it seems to have the most traction, let's call it. And I agree with you. You go in, you understand the business from the finance. Every single thing you do in a business either has a cost or it generates revenue. It will always have that leg of it. Of every transaction, everything you do, a workshop. Right now, we're costing money, probably to my company, but you're losing money right now. But you're also creating value through this podcast.
Yeah.
So everything is a financial transaction, and I agree with you. I'm not disputing you, but I'm saying, hey, we could look at it from that other angle as well. All right, let's cut it there. So 3 things I got out of the session, just reflecting on it and watching it again, is that finance can't just report the past. It needs to shape the future with real business insights. The next thing is that the best finance teams present the numbers visually and simply, turning your data into stories and visualizations that the average person, the average colleague can understand. Remember, they don't always understand the technicalities of finance, so make it as visual as you can. And then a true finance partner doesn't just crunch numbers. They challenge assumptions, they drive strategy, and they help the business change and improve and grow the business. So that was part 1. In part 2, Andrew and I will unpack generational work styles and dive into some of the AI concepts and the transformation that's hitting finance at the moment, and why exploring having a growth mindset is key to staying relevant in finance. So please join us on the next episode for that. And then just if you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons and drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you and the insights that Andrew gave, and see if it resonated with you and what resonated the most with you. That would be great. Thanks. Cheers.